This video is a review for the Unit 1 test. Now keep in mind that when I give you a quiz review, those same type of questions will also be on the test. I just won't typically repeat those questions on the test review. In other words, be aware of the fact that when you take the test, you'll have questions like there were on the quiz, but also in addition to that, questions like I'm going to review with you right now. So first of all, they're giving you a set of numbers and they want to know which number is the smallest and how you know that. Now there's more than one way to do this, but one way that I think makes a lot of sense is to add non-essential zeros until all the numbers have the same number of place values. Place values meaning the number of digits behind the decimal point. In other words, we can change these numbers so that they all have 3 digits behind the decimal point. So we can add a 0 here, we can add 2 zeros here, and we can add 2 zeros here. Okay. So now what we would have for numbers, and I guess I'll just put these along the side here, is we would have 620 thousandths. We would have 600 thousandths. Below it, I guess. We would have 630 thousandths. That one didn't need an extra 0 added to it. And we would have 700 thousandths. All right. I think that makes it easier to say which number is the smallest and also how you know. So as you look at these options, you can see that 600 thousandths is the smallest. All right. So we would say 0.6 is the smallest. And then for the how do you know, 0.6 is equal to 0.600. In other words, 0.6, 6/10 is equivalent to 600 thousandths, which is smaller than, and again, my bad typing in the play here, but which is smaller than the other ones, which is 620 thousandths, 630 thousandths, or 700 thousandths. Okay. Which number is the largest? How do you know? And again, if you look at these options, you can see once we've added those non-essential zeros, it's more obvious that the largest number then is the 0.7. And again, why is that the largest? How do we know? Because 0.7 or 7/10 is equal to 700 thousandths, which is larger than 620 thousandths, 600 thousandths, or 630 thousandths. Okay. So that helps us to not only tell which one's the smallest, which one's the largest, but to explain it. Again, it's not the only way to do it, but I think it's probably the most straightforward. Then for the third type that will be on the test, that wasn't necessarily already on the quiz, what is the area and perimeter of a rectangle if the width is 8 and the length is twice that amount? So my suggestion is to start by making a sketch for yourself. We want the width to be 8 centimeters, and they want the length to be twice that amount. Now remember, twice means the same as multiplying by 2. Oops, that color did not spell very well. Let's try again. So twice means the same as multiplying by 2. So if we take 8 centimeters and we multiply by 2, that means the length would be 16 centimeters. So we are basically asked for the area and perimeter of a rectangle. That's a bad looking M, where the width is 8 and the length is 16. Because again, that meets the criteria of being twice 8th. So area of a rectangle we know to be length times width. And again, that should be in your workbook already. So in this case, that would be 8 centimeters multiplied by 16 centimeters. And you can either use a multiplication table for that, you can multiply by hand, or if a calculator is an option, you can use that as well. But when you take 8 times 16, you're going to get 128. And remember that the label is important. So that's going to be square centimeters. Or you can write square centimeters, as we've talked about before, this way. But you do need to make sure you're looking for the right label. So if it was multiple choice and they had 128, but they didn't have the right label, then it would be incorrect. So make sure you're looking closely at your answer. Another type of question that will be on the test that was not on the quiz is this type of problem. At a grocery store, a display of cans, was arranged as follows. Row 1 had 30 cans, row 2 had 28, row 3 had 26. We want to make a table and extend it to 8 rows. So for making the table, just something really straightforward, like let's just do rows on the top and then number of cans on the bottom. And we can put in a line here. Okay. So when we had row 1, we know it had 30 cans. Row 2 had 28. Row 3 had 26. And we can tell what's occurring in terms of a pattern is that it's going down by 2 for each subsequent row. So that means row 4 would have to have 2 less. So row 4 would have 24. Row 5 would have 22. Row 6 would have 20. Row 7 would have 18. And row 8 would have 16. So that's what we mean by extending it to 8 rows. All right, continuing that pattern out to see it to the 8th row. Now they want to know if you continue to extend that pattern, what row would have 2 cans? Well, row 9 would have 14. Row 10 would have 12. All right, so far I've gotten up to that point. So row 10 we said has 12 cans. Okay. Row 11 then would have 10. You don't have to write this down, but I think that sometimes it's helpful to write it down for yourself. Use your scratch paper. Row 12 would have 8 cans. Row 13 would have 6 cans. Row 14 would have 4 cans. So that means which row would have 2 cans? That would be row 15. All right, so again, use your scratch paper and make sure that you're comfortable then with your answer. Number 5 type of question that will be on the test that we haven't already talked about in the quiz review. If a rectangle has an area of 50 square centimeters and a length of 5 centimeters, what is the width and how do you know that? So again, I think a sketch is always helpful. We know that this rectangle has an area of 50 square centimeters. We know that the length on it is 5. And again, it's okay if the drawing is not drawn to scale, meaning it doesn't have to be drawn accurately. I'm just trying to make sure we can understand the question. And we want to know what the width is. All right. Well, we know that the area of a rectangle, you could put this as part of your explaining how you got the answer. The area of a rectangle is length times width. We know that the area in this case is 50. We know that the length in this case is 5. So the question is, what would the width have to be? So in other words, 5 times what value is going to equal 50? And that would be 10. So the width would equal 10 centimeters because 5 times 10 would equal 50. Or you could say, you know that the width is 10 centimeters because 50 divided by 5 equals 10. All right, then they want a numerical expression for this phrase. Now, we did talk briefly about this in the quiz review, but I'm giving you another example of that. So 4 piles of 6 pennies each with 3 left over. 4 piles of 6 pennies each. So again, if you want to make yourself a quick sketch, all right, we have 4 piles, which I just usually use a box to show that. So we have 4 piles, and each of those piles has 6 pennies. And then we have 3 beyond that. Okay, so we've got 6, 6, 6, 6, and then another 3 pennies left over. Put plus 3 here. You could show the 3 pennies with the circles, however you want to do that. But the numerical expression then is just an expression that has just numbers and also has just numbers and mathematical operations. So 4 piles of 6 pennies each would be figured out to be 4 times 6. Okay, 4 times 6 plus the 3. 4 times 6 plus 3. Okay, and that would be considered the numerical expression. We also talked about on the quiz review that if you want to use x still for multiplication, you could do that as well. Okay. And then as far as finding the value, well, 4 times 6 is 24, plus 3 is 27. So that would be calculating the value of the expression. So again, you would either need one or the other of these numerical expressions. You don't need both. And then you would need the value. All right. You will have a word problem on the test where you need to make a diagram. Might not be the same type of problem as the quiz review, but that will be on there as well. And then we move on to this type. Fill in the blank with less than, greater than, or equal to. 5 sets of 6 minus 2 compared to 3 sets of 2 plus 1. Okay. Well, 6 minus 2, of course, we know is 4. So we basically are talking about 5 sets of 4 being compared to 3 sets of, well, 2 plus 1 would be 3. So the question is it greater than or equal to, greater than, less than, or equal to have 5 sets of 4 compared to 3 sets of 3? Well, 5 sets of 4 would be the same as 5 times 4, or 20. 3 sets of 3 would be the same as 3 times 3, which would be 9. So how does 20 compare to 9? 20 is greater than 9. All right, so you'd fill that in with a greater than sign. Then they want to know, also on the test, why is 1/10 greater than 9/100? Explain completely. Again, my suggestion here would be to start by adding a non-essential zero, because I think it makes it make more sense and helps you explain it as well. So we know that 1/10 is equal to 10/100. In other words, you can add an extra non-essential zero. And we know that 10/100 is greater than 9/100. So that would be enough to explain it. All right. 1/10 is the same as 10/100. By adding that non-essential zero, 10/100 is greater than 9/100. There are other ways you could explain it as well, but I think this is probably the most straightforward. All right, then another type of question that will be on the test that was not on the quiz is, if we assume that these lines are divided in equal parts, what is the length of the missing section? So what you want to do first is figure out, what is the distance here? Well, we're going from 0 to 60, and you're going to count the number of spaces. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces. So 0 to 60, and there are 6 spaces. So that means each space or each section must be 10, because 60 divided by 6 is 10. So if we have 3 sections in this bracketed area, 3 times 10 means the length of that would be 30. All right. Same concept here, only a little bit more difficult. It goes from 25 to 125. Okay, so instead of going from 0 to 60, it goes from 25 to 125. So you may want to start by saying, well, what is 125 minus 25? Okay, which is 100. So there's a total distance between these of 100. And again, you want to look at how many sections there are. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections. Again, don't count the lines, count the spaces or the sections in between. So if you have 100 divided into 5 sections, well, 100 divided by 5 means each section must be 20. So we have 2 bracketed areas, 2 bracketed sections. So this section is 20 and this section is 20. So 20 plus 20 means that this bracketed area is a length of 40. I am thinking of a number. When I multiply my number by 4 and add 6, I get 18. What's my number? All right, so you can figure this out in a multiple set of ways. You can even go back to what you've done, in elementary school where you use sort of the box to represent an unknown. But if you take that unknown number and you multiply by 4, and then you add 6, it needs to equal 18. So the question is, what number multiplied by 4 and adding 6 equals 18? And again, you could do a guess and test here. You could try to reason it out. But the correct answer is 3. 3 times 4 is 12. 12 plus 6 is 18. So 3 is the unknown number or the number that you're thinking of. So those again are the types of questions that you'll see on the test that were not necessarily again represented on the quiz review. The types of questions that were on the quiz will also be on the test. Take your time, go over this video and copy anything that you think would be helpful. Thank you.